Welcome to Life on Earth. Welcome to Life on Earth. Welcome to Life on Earth.
That's right. Welcome to Life on Earth with Robert and Amy Nasir.
Hello.
We're glad you're here. And we're looking for you in the chat. We need your participation today. We've got a big topic and big things to say about it. And we want to hear back from you as well. Jennifer has already chimed in. Good to know you are out there on the islands enjoying the show. Welcome to Life on Earth with Robert and Amy Nasir. Every week, we discuss topics of interest to admirers of Ayn Rand from the perspective of objectivism as in Ayn Rand's words, a philosophy for living on Earth, hence the name of the show. And this week, I've been enjoying Steven Pinker's latest book. I mentioned this last week. Here, I'll put up the slip cover, even though I don't have it on the book because really it's too much. It's kind of garish and it almost seems like he's trying to make a point here with the.
Well, he makes sure that pink is covering his last name.
Now that's interesting. I didn't
clever.
catch that. I did not catch that Pinker is actually in pink with the rainbow there. But my version of the book, or rather the book itself that I'm reading, I took the slip cover off and it looks like this, which is strange because he didn't have the name put on the front of the book, only on the spine. And that I think was a mistake, especially because the book doesn't come cheap, at least not if you're buying it now, while it is still a bestseller. What was it, $35, $45, something like that. But here's the thing. I've got to stop saying, here's the thing. I say, here's the thing too much. But here's the thing. Excuse me. I've been enjoying the book.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, to use the technical philosophical term, I've been arguing over it.
Of course.
Yes.
There are some things you might not like about it.
Is Steven Pinker an objectivist? No. Does Pinker's approach to an advocacy of rationality in a book called Rationality, What It Is, Why It Seems Scarce, Why It Matters?
It's a good title.
Does Pinker's advocacy of rationality jibe with, is it consistent with objectivism? No again. Or rather, no, but. And this is, it's the but that drives me nuts, because in some ways it's so good. See, back in February,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we have a Sunday show too,
Yes, we do.
that we've been doing for a year and a half, forever.
Yes.
You should go back and listen to them all. But in fact, I'll put it in the show notes to the episode on my Facebook wall. In February, on 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir, we presented an episode entitled Fallacies and Biases. And it was a short list of common failures, what people nowadays like to call failure modes, common failure modes, ways to get reason in general and logic in particular wrong. Fallacies and biases. And at the time, I made the observation that the lists of formal logical fallacies and informal fallacies and outright but very common biases, the list, just the lists on Wikipedia were too long for anyone but a logician or an academic philosopher to learn. But by memorizing the most common ones and by acquainting yourself with a broad survey of them, you can be less susceptible to those errors. And you can be more consistently objective. This is what I said back in February. We talked about it. The two of us talked about it on our show.
Yes, we did.
And Pinker, Steven Pinker, in his book, Rationality, What It Is, Why It Seems Scarce, Why It Matters, Pinker has provided just such a broad survey of rationality gone right and gone wrong. Rationality gone wrong. It sounds like a reality show, but it's in the book. And it's brilliant. The presentation is outstanding. Every way of getting rationality wrong and some of the antidotes, what you should have done, how to get it right, is in the book. It's as if he decided, I want to write the book on rationality, and proceeded to do so. So there's a big emphasis on domains of reasoning, categories. And again, how things go right and how things go wrong, definitely more on how they go wrong than how they go right. And that makes sense because it's full of examples. The book is full of examples.
Yep.
And that follows from his approach.
Yeah.
And that is why it drives me nuts.
So there's so many examples and not enough perhaps principles, maybe. I don't know.
Not enough grounding.
Yeah, not enough
And
grounding.
yeah, as a result, not enough principles, but not enough grounding. See, we're fans of Ayn Rand. We're admirers of the philosophy of objectivism.
And we have benefited from Ayn Rand's philosophy in our thinking.
And so we
Great.
And so we expect stuff to be grounded.
Yes.
Why do you believe what you believe? What's your definition of the concept in question? Well, in chapter 2 of the book, chapter 1 is more introductory. In chapter 2, rationality and irrationality.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Pinker starts out, I'll read a bit here. He starts out by saying, rationality is uncool. To describe someone with a slang word for the cerebral, like nerd, wonk, geek, or brainiac, is to imply that they are terminally challenged in hipness. So this is Pinker's writing style. For decades, Hollywood screenplays and rock song lyrics have equated joy and freedom with an escape from reason. Quote, a man needs a little madness, or else he never dares cut the rope and be free, said Zorbo the Greek. Or stop making sense, advised the Talking Heads. Let's go crazy, abjured the artist formerly known as Prince. So that's how he introduced the chapter. But what does he mean by rationality? Well, in the next section, chapter 2, reasons for reason. To begin at the beginning, what is rationality? As with most words in common usage, no definition can stipulate its meaning exactly. And the dictionary just leads us in a circle. Most define rational as having reason. But reason itself comes from the Latin ration, often defined as reason. A definition that is more or less faithful to the way the word is used is the ability to use knowledge to attain goals. Knowledge, in turn, is standardly defined as justified true belief. And then he goes right into the examples again. We would not credit someone as being rational if they acted on beliefs that were known to be false, such as looking for their keys in a place they knew the keys could not be. Or if those beliefs could not be justified, if they came, say, from a drug-induced vision or a hallucinated voice, rather than the observation of the world and influence from other true belief. The beliefs, moreover, must be held, now get this.
All right, I'm getting this. What is it?
If you're wondering, why does Pinker drive you so crazy? He's so smart and there's so much good stuff in the book. The beliefs, moreover, must be held in service of a goal. No one gets rationality credit for merely thinking true thoughts like calculating the digits of pi or cranking out the logical implications of a proposition. Then he gives examples. This might sound like he's grounding it, like he's saying, well, reason, rationality have to do with reality. They have a purpose. They have some value. The problem is that he's advocating goal-directed reasoning. And if you think that can't go wrong, listen to Jordan Peterson's 2 interviews with Sam Harris, in which he says, if something is not useful, it's not true. You hear these things and you think, well, nobody believes what he's implying with that. And then you find out, oh yeah, people do. So there's an issue there, this idea of goal-directed reasoning. And in fact, he will talk later in the book about motivated reasoning.
And how do you define truth again?
Justified true belief. Knowledge is a justified true belief. Now you might say, well, what does true mean? But he's not a philosopher. He's not going to get into that.
Or how do you justify? How do you validate?
Oh, by logic. Yes. So he actually gets into the same kind of argument we often do as objectivists or advocates of reason, which is You can say you don't need reason, but you can't do it rationally. You have to use reason even to deny reason. As he says from the book, at the end of the day, the discussants, the people talking about, do you need reason?
I'm a discussant.
Discussants. What is a discussant? I knew I was going to read this. I should have said it out loud. At the end of the day, the discussants, the people discussing stuff, have no choice but to continue to reason, because that's what they committed themselves to at the beginning of the day when they opened up a discussion of why we should follow reason. Sounds axiomatic, doesn't it? As long as people are arguing and persuading, and then evaluating and accepting or rejecting the arguments, as opposed to, say, bribing or threatening each other into mouthing some words. It's too late to ask about the value of reason. They're already reasoning and have tacitly accepted its value. Now, as objectivists, you might say, well, that makes it axiomatic, that you can't deny reason, therefore reason underlies all of your logic and all of your reasoning. You necessarily have to accept it as both existing and as efficacious. But if you don't accept the validity of axioms, if you don't regard axioms as knowledge, then you end up with this after the end of this section. Though we can never prove that reasoning is sound or the truth can be known, he says parenthetically, since we would need to assume the soundness of reason to do it, unquote, this is what modern skepticism gets you. This is what modern epistemology gets you. Though we can never prove that reasoning is sound, and he goes on, we can stoke our confidence that they are. When we apply reason to reason itself, we find that there is not just an inarticulate gut response. When we apply reason to reason itself, when you apply reason to reason itself, do you have an inarticulate gut response?
Is that like having confidence and confidence alone? No, I'm just, it sounded kind of musical the way you said it.
He says we can expose the rules of reason and distill and purify them into normative models of logic and probability. We can even implement them in machines that duplicate and exceed our own rational powers. Another reassurance that reason is valid is that it works. And he will go on with this.
Yeah. So without the grounding that that reality and reason are absolutes and axiomatic, and the way that Ayn Rand poses that, that existence is identity and consciousness is identification, and all of that wonderful philosophical framework that he doesn't have. He's like, well, seems to be working. Let's keep doing it.
Now, why does this matter?
Yeah.
Why, if you are not going to ground this in axioms and then say, well, I know this is true. I don't know it deductively. I know it inductively. I know it from the facts of reality. Why does this matter? Because when he gets to morality, what are you left with if your validation of reason is simply a broad survey that increases your confidence, as he puts it? In other words, your acceptance is essentially pragmatic. No matter what I do, reason seems to work. He goes on later when he gets into the question of morality. When you combine self-interest with sociality and impartiality, the interchangeability of perspectives, impartiality, you get the core of morality. Self-interest, because obviously reason has evolved to allow us to survive, to achieve our values. Okay, it's good. Sociality, his validation of that is that we don't live on a deserted island, or as I think he says, a desert island. But not all islands are desert. It should be deserted. Anyway, he accepts sociality as a premise. We're surrounded by people. We need to use this reason for it. That, of course, and obviously is going to necessitate all sorts of compromises. But when you combine self-interest with sociality and impartiality, you get the core of morality. You get, now here we go again, he's surveying facts of reality to achieve greater and greater confidence. It can't be certain, he says that flat out, but his survey of facts of reality gets him to this. You get the golden rule, or the variants that take note of George Bernard Shaw's advice, quote, "Do not do unto others as you would have others do unto you. They may have different tastes," unquote. A lot of very clever stuff in here. He does mention Rabbi Hillel's version, something that is an improvement. What is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. But he does a whole survey. He mentions versions of the rules from Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Confucianism, Islam, Baha'i, and other religions and moral codes. Okay, so in the chat, people who may or may not be as smart as Steven Pinker, but apparently are much more well-grounded, having subscribed to the philosophy of Ayn Rand, mention Atlas Shrugged, which I'm going to do too. Here, let me hit the cough button for a moment. All right, sorry about that. I've got the cough E here, and apparently that's causing the coughing. Although that may be a rash assumption, as I'm sure Steven Pinker would tell me, but I'm going to go to the source, my source, Ayn Rand and the Objectivist Ethics from the Virtue of Selfishness. This may be my most beat up version of Virtue of Selfishness, but I always come back to it.
That's a wonderful image there.
It is. And Ayn Rand writes, rationality is man's basic virtue, the source of all his other virtues. Okay, great. That's the Objectivist Ethics. But how do we ground that? Is that any more grounded than what Steven Pinker is saying? Well, the virtue of rationality means the recognition and acceptance of reason as one's only source of knowledge, one's only judge of values, and one's only guide to action. It means one's total commitment to a state of full conscious awareness, to the maintenance of a full mental focus in all issues, in all choices, in all of one's waking hours. It means a commitment to the fullest perception of reality within one's power and to the constant active expansion of one's perception, i.e. of one's knowledge. It means a commitment to the reality of one's own existence, i.e. to the principle that all of one's goals, values, and actions take place in reality, and therefore that one must never place any value or consideration above one's perception of reality. She goes on, but that's pretty well grounded, but I think Pinker may have taken it about that far. I think we can go a little further by saying, well, if rationality is a commitment to reason, what is reason? Also from the virtue, the Virtue of Selfishness to the Objectivist Ethics. Why am I stumbling over that? The Objectivist Ethics in the book, The Virtue of Selfishness.
Yeah.
Reason is the faculty that identifies and integrates the material provided by man's senses. Now that'll get you somewhere. Reason is the faculty that identifies and integrates the material provided by man's senses. Well, is that more objective than Pinker taking a broad survey of all of the contexts in which reason works? I'm holding up the air quotes here, works. Well, in Faith and Force, the Destroyers of the Modern World, Rand says, reason integrates man's perceptions by means of forming abstractions or conceptions, thus raising man's knowledge from the perceptual level, which he shares with animals, to the conceptual level, which he alone can reach. The method which reason employs in this process is logic, and logic is the art of non-contradictory identification. Ayn Rand takes it down to reality. And the difference is that once she gets down to reality, she's willing to validate it.
Yes.
Not to prove it. Pinker's right. You can't prove the basics of epistemology, but to validate them. And in reading the book, and I've gone through it twice now, once on Audible and then once with the Dead Tree version here, I can't quite, he's so close. And in some ways you could assume it, but I can't quite get Pinker to come down to reality, to axioms, to actually say, we know stuff. There is some stuff we actually know. And what's revolutionary about Rand is that she makes that last step. She grounds her premises in essentially the three axioms of reality.
Yes. And the way that she defines axioms are, an axiom is a statement that identifies the base of knowledge, and of any further statement pertaining to that knowledge, a statement necessarily contained in all others, whether any particular speaker chooses to identify it or not. An axiom is a proposition that defeats its opponents by the fact that they have to accept it and use it in the process of any attempt to destroy it. You know, Ayn Rand, I really love her forthrightness and her courage in just saying, this is what, these are the axioms, and nobody has the power to step outside of existence into non-existence, as it were, and to say, hey, look, there's proof of the axioms of existence, and consciousness, and
that is
causality.
To steal the title from Harriman and Peikoff's book, that is the logical leap that Pinker regards as, that he doesn't make. I don't even know if he regards it in any particular way. He simply won't make that leap.
Mm-hmm.
So to Pinker, those axioms are not certain. They're not grounded because they can't be proved deductively. Mm-hmm. And remember, to most philosophers, induction mm-hmm. is still an unproven idea.
That is.
And the most you can do is know crazy. Things with a certain degree of probability.
Yeah.
The only things you can be certain are analytic truths.
Mm.
In other words, truths we make up. 2 and 2 is 4. Just because we don't allow 2 and 2 to be anything else. Everything else is contingent. Everything else is just, well, we've looked out there, and at least so far, logic has always worked. Reason has always been the faculty that identifies and integrates the material provided by man's senses. But we don't know that for certain, because certainty would require, well, in Pinker's mind, a leap of faith.
Intrinsicism and dogmatism.
The idea of a logical leap is a contradiction in terms. If it's a leap, it must not be logical. And that's why, as brilliant as Pinker is, and as much as I recommend the book, which is outstanding in just about every way, he just drives me nuts, because this is the most important topic. Reason, rationality.
Yes.
He wraps it up in chapter 11 with why rationality matters. Offering reasons why rationality matters is a bit like blowing into your own sails or lifting yourself by your bootstraps. It cannot work unless you first accept the ground rule that rationality is the way to decide what matters. He regards that as a weakness. The fact that because it undergirds everything else, well, then you just have to accept it in order to get to anything else. Fortunately, as we saw in chapter 2, we all do accept the primacy of reason, at least tacitly, as soon as we discuss this issue or any issue, rather than coercing assent by force. In other words, rather than sticking your fist in somebody's face.
Yeah.
He sees how crucially important it is. And yet, because of his epistemology, it has to be, look, this stuff works, and you have to accept it to use it. But he cannot ground it in existence, in consciousness, in identity, the way that objectivism provides. And it drives me nuts because he's a smart guy. The explanations are out there. I just want to throw a hardcover copy of Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology at his head. Actually, you don't even have to go back that far. Amy and I were discussing earlier, when did you first encounter these axioms?
Right.
Existence, consciousness, identification. Was it in Opar and we thought about it? It's like, no, it goes back further than that.
Speech.
It's actually in Galt's speech.
Absolutely.
The whole philosophy, we think, well, work of fiction, and I know the speech was pretty heavy, but to get to the really academic stuff, don't you need to get into Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology or a copy of Leonard Peikoff's Objectivism of Philosophy? As valuable as that is, those basics are all in Galt's speech.
Yes.
Rationality and material progress. I'm not even going to read the excerpts. The point is, when he gets to the final chapter, Why It Matters, he has a section called Rationality and Material Progress. Obviously, rationality works. And having written the book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, showing how everything has gotten better over time, and having written the book Enlightenment Now, and showing not just that progress has been constant, but that there are reasons for that, and the reason is reason, the Enlightenment, rationality, he then can say, well, rationality gets you rationality and material progress. The next section, rationality and moral progress. And finally, let me get to it because I can't remember what the subsection was titled. Oh, looks like I passed it over there. He can see what rationality does for us. He understands the importance of rationality in personal progress, rationality in our lives. He can see the power of rationality in all of those domains. If he was just grounded in an understanding of induction and axiomatic concepts, how much more powerful would this be? How much better an ally would he be? It's a magnificent book, and it drives me nuts. And,
and
that is
also,
why.
And honestly, I think it's a bit discouraging. I haven't read the book yet, although I've seen excerpts that Robert and I've talked about. But how do you motivate somebody to be rational if you're basically presenting it as, in order to actually justify rationality, I need to give you just hundreds of examples to do it. And what is he really saying there? You really can't get to the truth unless you write a gigantic book and you're extremely, you're extremely smart like Steven Pinker is. I don't. Maybe I should.
Should he be able to do better than? Well, it always works.
Yeah, for sure. And it's very daunting the way that his approach to that is, and. Yeah, and it isn't necessary. So I kind of, it's one of those things where we've got some interesting comments and questions in here. There's the DDV show, yes.
Yes.
So a DDV show says, have you guys tried to synthesize these analytic truths and contingent truths? Well, let me tell you, one of Robert's favorite essays by Leonard Peikoff is The Analytic Synthetic Dichotomy, which should tell you right there that he's got that covered pretty well. Can you please tell us about that?
No, I can't.
A little bit.
No, I wanted to analyze them. Oh, completely lost that. Yeah, give me some water.
Yes. Coffee's not good for clearing the throat.
Coffee's not doing it for me. Why not? Coffee is my friend. Coffee loves us. This I know, for the coffee pot tells me so.
Yes.
But yes, have I? No, I have not done the Hegelian Marxian synthesis there. I need to start with the thesis and then find the antithesis, and then find the synthesis between the two. No, for some reason, that kind of thinking just hasn't gotten me there, but I'll work on it. I will work on that. Now we are half an hour in, which means we don't have too much further to go. I need to stop and say Thanks to Enric for the super chat.
Yes.
That's right. Unlike our Sunday show, because we are presenting on the Ayn Rand Center UK's magnificent YouTube channel, you have the opportunity to give us a super chat. Hit the $sign, ask a question that will be highlighted, that will stand out, that is sure to get all sorts of attention, both from us and the other watchers out there. And the money supports the Ayn Rand Center UK. You can go to aynrandcenter.co.uk and you can sign up. You can be a member and you can have access to things which, I mean, the channel is amazing. The presentations are amazing, but there are other things happening that if you're not a member, you're not seeing them. You need to get there. Sign up to be part of the Ayn Rand Center UK. Very, very cool.
I put the URL into the chat.
Excellent. And Enric did use the super chat to say, what did he say? Thanks for the useful review and pointing out the problem of not identifying the axioms. Enric, I absolutely recommend the book. It's worth a read, but you will notice that too. You will say he's so frigging close. Why can't he do induction? Why can't he see the power of these axioms that would ground things in a way where in these debates, incidentally, he has a talk tonight in California. I'll post it in the show notes right after the show. When he gives these talks, when he goes out and talks about progress, when he goes out and talks about the Enlightenment, when he goes out and talks about the primacy of rationality and why you need to respect and adopt this, if he could just make that last, again, logical leap, if he could just ground it, if he could just say, well, there are some axioms here, and they're not floating. They're not on faith. They're actually grounded in the same observation of facts of reality, the evidence of your senses. And that's not just my arbitrary prejudice. I can, no, not prove it by logic. Logic depends on it, but I can actually ground it. I can validate it. I can show you that, yes, this is true. He gets it, but he doesn't get it. And I wish he got that last little bit. How much power would there be in that? And DDV show says, have a lovely day. Very much appreciated. As I continue to lose my voice here. Thank you.
Yes. So I mean, my takeaway from this is that Steven Pinker is so afraid to call out, reason as an absolute and rationality as an absolute and reality as an absolute.
Afraid?
I mean, he's hesitant to.
He's unwilling.
He's unwilling to, in the sense that he's trying not to be an intrinsicist. He's trying not to be.
That's right. Absolutes are the domain of faith.
Yeah. And I appreciate that from him and everything like that. But I mean, somebody needs to call him up and say, hey, Stephen, that's not necessary for you to do that.
It can be done. These basic truths can be validated with, again, a logical leap, not a leap of faith. Jennifer chimes in, says, thank you, with a super chat. Thank you so much for that. Very, very much appreciated. And Jennifer, of course, is awesome in all the ways anyway.
Yes.
So I could not resist having a discussion about this topic. You should read the book. It's an outstanding book. It will take you through, and the fun thing is it will answer fallacies that I've seen before, but I've never seen them unraveled the way Steven Pinker. That guy's brilliant. Never seen them unraveled the way that he does. The classic example is the Monty Hall problem. And he addresses it for the first time in a sensible way. This idea that you have three doors and
game theory. Yeah.
In game theory, yeah. Mm-hmm. He has a whole chapter on game theory, but another chapter on statistics and another chapter. He gives great explanations of logical fallacies and statistical fallacies and all the ways in which rationality can go wrong. And he generally provides pretty good answers to how to get back on track as well. Outstanding book, worth reading. As I said in February, you do need to know the most common logical fallacies, and you need a broad survey of them just to see what's happening there. You don't have to become a philosopher in that regard, but just that much will give you the ability to catch yourself making these mistakes. And even if in every instance you don't know how to resolve the conflict, you can at least say, oh yeah, in this case, I'm not being objective, or I'm not being rational, or I'm not respecting the rules of this type of situation. Good stuff. Drives me nuts, but a really good book. I heartily recommend it to anybody who hasn't seen it or picked it up, hasn't read it yet. And And I think,
Yeah, so well, real quick is that if you'd like to support Robert and I directly, as you know, as long as you support the Ayn Rand Center UK as well, of course. But if you'd like to support us directly, you're welcome to go to robertnasir.com and give us a tip on PayPal or become a Patreon. There's a link. There's some links there, and we highly recommend it because we'd love to have a value for value kind of trade, a win-win relationship with you guys, and that would be lovely. And of course, please support Ayn Rand Center UK. And Robert's going to be looking.
I'm looking through the chat here. There's great comments, not too many questions.
Yes.
But a lot of good stuff in there.
Like, you know, you guys are really the best because a lot of you guys have read Ayn Rand and have read other philosophers and have read Steven Pinker. And, you know, that's it's a wonderful thing to continually learn new things and not be afraid to delve into the bigger issues, the very important issues, such as the validation of reason. That's extraordinarily important. Oh, thank you very much, Action Jackson. He says, any other non-objectivist books that we might recommend?
Yeah, the short answer is no, because everything else I read besides, again, these 3 Steven Pinker books, which I've really enjoyed, there's a few others. I'll have to look up a better answer to that question. But most of what I read that's non-objectivist material is completely non-objectivist material, like old science fiction, Robert Heinlein, a few really woo books like Richard Bach. So I don't know, what would you recommend from the non-objectivist corpus in that regard? You know, occasionally things will come out that they're more of their moment.
Right.
So for example, I have, you know, the last few books that Christopher Hitchens wrote.
Yes.
But, you know, that's when the new atheism was very big, and Hitchens was among the better writers in that regard. He was reasonable, not always rational,
right,
but enormously insightful and very entertaining. So I greatly enjoyed God Is Not Great. His book Mortality is sad, but it's also a great book. We've done whole episodes on Memento Mori. You know, remember that you will die someday, and reading a book like that reminds you, oh man, I better, as Morgan Freeman's character would say, I better get busy living or get busy dying. So yeah, I don't know that I have too much philosophical content I recommend.
On our other podcast, 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir and Amy Nasir, we've talked about thinking fast and slow, and we've talked about all sorts of different books by Tim Ferriss and
definitely Daniel Kahneman.
Yeah. But they're not they're a little bit more self-helpy, sort of goal-directed action sorts of books and
I especially enjoyed The 3 Languages of Politics, and I've recommended that multiple times on the show, and we'll give you a better idea of what are your crazy liberal friends talking about, or what are your crazy conservative friends talking about, or if you're a conservative or a liberal, what are your crazy libertarian friends talking about? The 3 Languages of Politics, highly recommended, and the earlier versions of it are available for free online if you do a search for it. Do you have an opinion on Dan Barker? I have not listened to Dan Barker in a couple of years. He's a famous atheist, former preacher, very entertaining. Got a little, during the Trump years, and everybody knows my opinion of Trump couldn't be lower, but the sort of reactions to Trump were a little over the top, and they weren't the kind I wanted to see. Reactions against Trump, believe me, but anyway, I don't know what Dan Barker's up to these days. I should probably give him a listen. The Freedom from Religion Foundation that he's leading as part of the co-manager of it. You'd have to remind me of the gal who runs it with him. Good stuff, good advocacy, and probably more reasonable than the folks at the Satanic Temple, although Amy's a much bigger fan of them.
Yeah, the Satanic Temple folks are very interesting folks, and they don't bite, and also they don't actually believe in the devil.
Yeah, the new atheists had so many victories over time that I kind of dropped the reins there and stopped watching what they were up to. About the time that gay marriage was made universal across the country, it seemed like they had some substantial victories, and And I didn't feel the need to keep in touch as much. But maybe I should. Maybe I should see what those folks are up to.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send Ayn Rand Center UK $5, and I'm going to give you $5 because I have one more question for Robert.
You're going to put in a super chat on our own show.
Yeah, a double super chat, as a matter of fact. So then my question is, does Steven Pinker, when he talks about how rationality improves your moral life,
yes,
personal moral life, what does he think morality is? Is he kind of stuck in the whole altruistic thinking? What's your impression of that?
He absolutely regards altruism as a moral ideal. And it's one of the reasons why I wish he was more grounded, because if you regard morality, if you regard knowledge as a survey of what works, and again, he's not an explicit pragmatist, but that's his method because he doesn't base it on axioms, then altruism will come to seem as self-evident, a self-evident good. Let's see if I can find a good citation for that. The short answer is no, I can't. But no, altruism is fundamental to his moral beliefs. And it is, again, to everybody in the new intellectual community, the new dark web, everybody from Pinker to even people who are considered somewhat right-wing, Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris. Altruism is just a premise. It's as Ayn Rand pointed out, it's a frozen abstraction. To these folks, morality means altruism. Being good means altruism. And Frank Rockefeller says blah, blah, blah. Excuse me.
Action Jackson says planet blah.
Yeah, planet blah. A shout out to crazy Greta.
Yeah. And, she's not crazy. She's just a young, misguided youth.
She is. Well, if you believe what she believes, then you have to say what she says. It comes down to that. It's the power of ideas. If you believe what she believes, you have to say the kinds of things that she says. And you have to be angry in all the ways that she's angry. Jeb Fanatic says, the Satanic Temple promotes egoism without objectivity. Everybody promotes whatever they promote without objectivity. And it's why you're right, that is not untrue. As much as I know you enjoy the work that they do, they are subjectivists, and everybody is.
They're interesting to follow.
They are interesting to follow. And it's one of the reasons why, maybe the big reason why I wish, and I do more than wish, of course. I post and I write, and hopefully at some point we will reach somebody like Steven Pinker. I wish that he would adopt just a few basic ideas from objectivism, because there's so much he already has in common. Because he's smart, he's a bright guy, he's focusing on reality, facts of reality. If he would just get a few of those basic epistemological, we talked about, well, what's the difference between the modern intellectuals, the Steven Pinkers of the world, the idea that, well, nothing is certain unless it's, these abstract analytic proofs, but nothing that we know is certain. Everything has a confidence ratio or a confidence level. Mm-hmm. Everything is somewhere between 0 and 0.999, but nothing is certain. Certainty means faith. What is the difference between that and the contextual theory of knowledge and objectivism? Mm-hmm. If they could make that leap, that ability to say, well, certain things are certain in the full context of knowledge. There are certain things I know right now that I can't be wrong about without every other thing I know being wrong. And there's no way for that to be possible. It's just not possible that this is all a dream and I'm wrong about every single thing. And I'm sure they would come back at me and say, well, what you're saying is you have a 10 nines confidence ratio that you can't be wrong about everything, and you're not actually asleep. How do you bridge that gap? If you could, Steven Pinker could become one of the people to save the world
Yeah.
And
But we have another question here from Action Jackson. How about Richard Dawkins?
how about Richard
How about
Dawkins?
him?
Another person I haven't
selfish
followed
being.
since he got a little, I would say he's gotten a little bit woo, but as he's gotten older, I don't like his style. He's become bitter. He's become angry. He used to understand the importance of benevolence, and he had a certain charm about him. Maybe, again, it's been a few years, so maybe I need to return to him again and see what he's up to. Very much enjoyed his work for a few years there, and then kind of let it go. So maybe you can tell me, should I get back into whatever he's up to these days? I haven't gone to his website in a while. A lot of the people that he's associated with himself with, because for a while there wasn't much content on his website from him, a lot of it had to do with the circle of people he's working with. A lot of it was politically very left and very off-putting. And
and when you're talking about altruism as a moral ideal, altruism is an inept form of morality. It just tells you who benefits. It doesn't tell you how to create, how to guide your life, and all the other things that Ayn Rand covered so brilliantly. But after a while, altruism will leave you bitter because it's an unattainable moral code. And it will leave you bitter. So I'm not surprised.
So Action Jackson, you have now inspired me to go back and see, well, what is Richard Dawkins up to these days? What are folks like Dan Barker and the Freedom from Religion Foundation up to these days? I'll have to take a look, and maybe by next week I'll have better answers to those questions. So thank you for that. Thank you to everybody who's jumped on the super chat there. We started out kind of quiet there. The whole screen was white, and it's not appropriate to be all white these days. So that was good to get a little color in the super chat there. I appreciate that. Again, my bottom line is love the book.
Yeah.
What do they say? Hate the sin, love the sinner. But in this case, I love the sin and I hate the sin. No, that's not right.
No.
Love the book, but you see my frustration. Read the book. Now you know what you're getting into. Now you know the part that's going to make you want to bang the book against the side of your head or go find Steven Pinker and throw it at him. Great book, outstanding, love it. But that's my frustration. I hope that in discussing it, it gives you a better sense of, oh yeah, when I run into that stuff, okay, I know the answer. I knew that was going to be there. And in conversations with other folks about the topic, you can let them know, hey, this is where Pinker, this is how far he goes, and we take it one step further, and that's what you should do. It's certainly what I recommend for each of you. We're going to go over to Clubhouse now.
Yes,
we're going to talk on Clubhouse where you can talk to us, tell us if you've read the book, and if you have, what you think of it. Of course, Clubhouse tends to become anarchy, basically, and it's the only place in the entire universe where we promote anarchy. So come up, talk to us.
We'll be good with moderating, I'm sure.
Amy will be a strong moderator while I will be in my usual anarchy mode. So thank you for joining us for Life on Earth. Glad I could get this off my chest. Hope it was, if not useful, at least entertaining for you to join us in it. Thank you for all of your chat comments.
Yes,
very cool what's going on in the chat. And we will see you next Thursday. Thank you for Life on Earth.
Thank you for joining us on Life on Earth.